So in my last video, I talked about how much it actually costs us to live here in Southeast Asia compared to Australia as a family of four, and that piqued a lot of interest. So in today's video, I'm going to go through the exact numbers of what it costs us to live monthly here in Southeast Asia full time. So for those who don't know anything about us, we're a family of four that decided to leave Australia so we could spend more time together amongst a bunch of other things and move to Southeast Asia to live full time. And like I said, in this video, I'm going to go through the cost breakdown of basically what we spend in a month. Also, just a reminder that these costs are in Australian dollars. Okay, so the first expense we have here is rent. So we rent a 4-bedroom condo overlooking the ocean in Penang, and we pay $1,200 Australian a month for that. Now, that's a 4-bedroom condo with 5 bathrooms, 2 parking spaces, a full pool facility, a full gym facility, and also it is 2,400 square feet. You have 2 bedrooms that overlook the ocean, and the main living area overlooks the ocean as well. And we pay about $300 a week for that all in. So that there is a lot of little fees that we had to pay when we got the lease. It's a lot different to Australia. We had to pay an agent's fee on top of that, which was 1 month of rent. Our rent is 3,400 ringgit a month. And that's obviously the biggest costs that we have is renting our apartment here in Penang. Okay, so the next cost we have here is electricity, and this can vary obviously month to month, but it's going to be anywhere between $150 to $200 a month for electricity. That is the one downside of Southeast Asia, is that electricity is quite expensive. Pretty much everything else is cheap, but the electricity generation in Southeast Asia, and we're in Malaysia for context, is expensive. So $150 to $200 a month for electricity. I'm not sure what the going rate for electricity is in Australia, but it's about what we were paying in Australia when we were at home. You got to remember too, in Southeast Asia, you're going to be using the air conditioners a lot more than you would at home back in Australia. So that's going to be a bigger cost to you than a lot of other utilities that you have to pay for here in Southeast Asia. So our third cost here is water. Water is really cheap in Southeast Asia. It's one of the cheapest utilities you've got access to. So it's about $30 a month Australian for water where we are in Penang, and each municipality charges different amounts. Each city charges different amounts. It's just about $30 for us, and that includes sewage as well. So in Southeast Asia, if you live in a big condo, you've got to pay for sewage as well, which is generally $10 a month of that. So water is about $20 a month. And again, that can vary based on usage, but you've got to remember, in our case, we're not paying to have a garden. It's really just the showers and using water for general purposes. Where we are in Malaysia, the water is actually potable. So all we do is put it through a water filter, and then we can drink it out of the tap pretty much. Now, in other places in Southeast Asia, like Bali, like Vietnam and places like that, you can't drink the water even if it's filtered. So your water expenses might be a bit more if you're in a country where the country doesn't treat the water very well. But in Malaysia, the water's treated quite well. The only issue is the pipes that it goes through are quite old. So we have a water filter attached to our tap, and we've been drinking that water, brushing our teeth with it, and it's perfectly fine. None of us get sick from it. And guys, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're interested in learning more about how we go about this life, the little intricacies that go into it. And maybe if you're thinking of doing this move yourself, or maybe you want to travel full time, getting a good gauge and indication of what it costs to do and the logistics of it is pretty valuable. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. So the next expense we have here is gas. Gas is $10 a month where we are, and that's for basically the hot water systems. I think we have 2 of them actually, and for stoves. We have 2 kitchens in our apartment. We have a dry kitchen and a wet kitchen, which both have stoves. So the gas is plumbed up to both of them. And we're in a unique situation because our whole condo is gas. A lot of condos in Southeast Asia, you have to get up gas bottles, but ours is actually hooked up to the main gas system. So we have to pay national gas for that, and that's $10 a month for gas, which I think is quite reasonable. And then we have our phone bill, which is unlimited internet. Mainly, we don't really use it for phone calls, but we have 2 SIM cards that go into this phone and the other phone we have. And that is $33 a month for both those SIM cards. And that gives us unlimited data. And you could get plans that are cheaper than that. I reckon you could halve that cost if you really wanted to. But we use a lot of internet. We're a family of 4. We're constantly watching Netflix. I work online, obviously, so I use a lot of internet as well. And to have internet on the go is quite cost effective here. So like I said, it's about $15 a month for internet, and that's unlimited internet. So $33 a month for the phone utilities here. The next thing we have here is car servicing. So we have a car. We have what's called a Peruda Alza, which is like a little MPV, 7-seater. That car itself cost us about $7,000 for a 2011 car. And we service that obviously once every 3 months I've got here. And that's about $100 to service here. The beauty about Malaysia is that there's several brands that are Malaysian. You've got Proton, you've got Perdua, and any mechanic can do the servicing for them. They're simple cars with simple engines. So the servicing is really cheap to do here. And fuel is about 80 cents a litre. So to run the car is also quite cheap, 80 cents a litre. And the parts to repair it are really cheap as well. We haven't had any big mechanical issues with the car yet, but we've met people that have had to do new timing belts, things like that in their car. And they've gotten away with replacing a timing belt for like $400 Australian here. Now, if you were going to do that in Australia, you're looking at $1,000, $2,000 for a timing belt. So next thing we have here is fuel. Like I touched on just before, fuel is anywhere between 70 to 90 cents a litre, depending on where you go. That's Australian, of course. 90 cents a litre. We spend about $30 a month on fuel. And that's, we drive pretty much every day. Between me going to Muay Thai and the kids doing their little extracurricular activities, we spend about $33 a month on fuel, which I think is quite reasonable considering how much driving we do, which would be 300 or 400 kilometers a month, maybe more, maybe 600 kilometers a month. So it's basically a tank of fuel. Okay, so the next expense we have here is a grocery shop. So this isn't including takeaway or eating out. This is just our grocery bill. We spend about $500 a month on groceries. Now this can vary depending on how much we eat out, but generally we're eating 3 to 4 dinners at home, pretty much every lunch at home and pretty much every breakfast at home. So about the same as what you would do at home, maybe eating out 3 times a week or 4 times a week, just depending on what we feel like eating. But that's just basically having an Australian diet here in Malaysia. Now, if you were going to go full Southeast Asian and have a Southeast Asian diet over here, a lot more rice, less spaghettis, less pastas, things like that, you could easily cut this down to $300 a month, $250 a month for a family. But we like what we like. We still like to eat cheese. We like milk. That stuff is quite expensive over here. The basic staples aren't too bad, like your sugar, your chicken is really cheap here. But if you want to eat anything that's Western, what could be considered Western, it's got to be imported, and generally that's pretty expensive. So our food costs are generally sort of 100 to 150 a week, depending on what we buy and what we grab. But that's for a family of 4 as well, and that's eating at home 4 times a week. That's pretty much eating every lunch at home and every breakfast. So then we also have entertainment, which is $100 a month. Entertainment, that's going to be the biggest variable expense for most people. We don't really do much that costs a lot of money. We might occasionally go see a movie. For context, a movie here in Southeast Asia is around $7 a person, $6 a person. You can get away with popcorn for like $2. So, all in, you're looking at about $40 for a family to go and see the latest movie. But everything else is generally pretty cheap. Generally, what we'll do is we'll go to a park, we'll take the kids on their bikes, we'll go do bits and pieces, the same thing we would do at home. But when we do go out and do things, it's just not as expensive. The other day, we went rock climbing with boulders and things like that. For a family, you're looking at less than $50 to do that. Go-karting, you're looking at $30 a person. It's just everything entertainment-wise is a lot cheaper over here. So our entertainment bill is subsequently a lot cheaper than what we were spending back in Australia. So the next thing we have here is the gym, which is basically my wife's yoga classes and my Muay Thai. The actual gym itself, our condo has a really, really good gym, and I'll do a tour of our condo soon. But our condo has a pool and has a really, really nice gym. So when we want to do weights, we just do it at the gym in our building. But I do Muay Thai as well, which I have to obviously pay for, and my wife does yoga. So we're looking at about $50 a month for the gym here for both of us to go and do these extracurricular activities. And this can vary as well because sometimes the kids will do activities as well. But that's a pretty good gauge of what it costs us monthly. And then we have the cost for miscellaneous medicine and prescriptions and things like that. And that is $50 a month for us. Obviously, that will vary based on your requirements, but it's $50 a month for us. So all up on average, you're looking at $2,532 a month for us to live as a family of 4 in Southeast Asia, specifically Penang in Malaysia. Now, that cost will vary greatly depending on how much you spend on alcohol. For instance, we don't drink alcohol, so there's no alcohol expense in that. It also depends on where in Southeast Asia you go. If you were to live and base yourself in Vietnam, I reckon you could easily get that under to maybe $2,300, $2,200 a month. If you're living in maybe if you're living in the center of Bangkok, that cost might go up slightly. It really just depends on where in Southeast Asia you go to, but it's not going to be any more than $3,000 a month for most families. And this doesn't take into account if you're traveling much as well. So this is the cost for a family that has settled down and has moved somewhere. If you're traveling around, which we did for the first year and a half of our venture, you're looking closer to maybe $40,000, $50,000 a year to do that, because the travel is $20,000 of that, $15,000, $20,000 of that. Between the Airbnb costs and the costs of grabs and transit without a car, and then obviously the flights everywhere, you could be adding $15,000, $20,000 to this yearly, an extra $1,000 or $2,000 a month to your expenses. But even that, traveling around Southeast Asia full time is going to cost you less than $50,000 a year to do. Staying in one spot and living in Southeast Asia is going to cost you less than $30,000 a year. It's not a bad way to go about it. Again, when we were back in Australia, we struggled. And I don't think we did much more than this. It's just everything was more expensive, which is a death by a thousand cuts a lot of the time. And this is why I tell people that you don't need to make as much as you think to live here in Southeast Asia. You can get away with earning less and maybe deriving your income online and making the $30,000 a year, or making the $50,000 a year minus tax, making that and living a pretty good life for that cost. So guys, hopefully you found this video helpful. Obviously it's a bit rough and ready. This is just based off a spreadsheet that we have. But make sure to subscribe to the channel, like I said, if you're interested in learning more about this lifestyle and all the little intricacies that go into it. I'm going to be making a video once a week about that. And also, if you haven't yet, I've got a video right here on how we derive our income while traveling full-time as a family and living overseas. And a lot of you will find that interesting if you want to do this lifestyle. So guys, take care, and I'll catch you in the next video.